And when you realize that J.M. Mannion was running basically a soft porn sites using the
and getting paid over 3 years, 900,000, and no one questioned those payments. And all the payments that flow into Mannion operate under this opacity, as the article describes, in the form of cash. Why the fuck is that not being investigated by the IRS at least?
All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Muscle Discord. And I got a special guest on the show, Shawn Stone from Perth, Australia. Welcome to the show, brother.
Thanks for having me, Matt. And by special, I hope you don't mean special needs, because
no, we're not going there. We've dealt with that with Bob Cicherillo, or Dickerillo, as I call him. I gave him
I'm sure they'll have a lot to say after this one, perhaps.
Yes.
So,
I'm sure they will. I'm sure they will. They're definitely going to watch. I know that. All of them. The Mannions.
Spinning the counter narrative as we speak. So yes, let's hit them hard.
You're going to have a boardroom meeting after this one. So a lot of people may not know who you are, Shawn. And I saw your YouTube channel, and it's going to be in the description below, guys. So make sure you go check it out. Shawn, to me, when I saw his videos for the first time, I was like, man, is this guy a filmmaker or something? Like, how can he do this style of like, it's almost like a documentary style that you do on your videos. But before we get into that, just tell us a little bit about yourself, your background in bodybuilding, and how you got involved in all of this.
Yeah, I got into bodybuilding in the early 90s, when I think it was probably at its heyday, and what we probably refer to as our golden era. I think we're pretty much around about the same age. I'm in my early 50s. I think you're much younger, or
I mean 40s.
Early 40s, but it was the time when Dorian Yates and Sean were all at the top of their game. Bodybuilding was this mythologized, beloved activity that we all loved, and we only had access through the magazines. And compared to the landscape of information that we have these days and the entire ecosystem, it was like literally another world. Was it a better world? I like to think so. But, sometimes the more things change, the more they stay the same. So just probably a little bit more about myself as well. I was a teacher for 20 years. I taught overseas. I taught from kindergarten all the way up to high school, adults as well, lived in different countries. But bodybuilding's always been the one constant throughout my life. Even at the time, I was sick for 7 years with chronic fatigue syndrome. So it's something that's always helped me out in the health and fitness aspect and keep me balanced and centered.
Every rep starts with fuel. Helix cream of rice, clean carbs, zero sugar, fast digesting energy that hits quick, fuels hard, and never sits heavy. 27 grams of pure carb power, nothing but rice and real flavor. Proudly made in Canada, built for champions. Grab yours now with code MuscleDiscord. Helix Foods, fuel the work, own the stage.
Keep me poor as well.
Did you ever compete?
I did, yeah. I competed at the state and national level. Ironically, it was an Arnold Classic I competed and won. And Sean Ray was the compere. Sean Ray has always been one of my favorite bodybuilders. And like whatever we have to say here today, I always find Sean and Bob, they're obviously very articulate, well-spoken and eloquent commentators of the sport. I don't always agree with everything that they say. And, just sometimes recently I've noticed that they are very good at spinning their own narrative to run cover for the IFBB and also twist the words of anybody that has, like yourself, any kind of criticism towards the organization. So this is nothing personal against them, and it's just all for the fun of the game. But, the commonality is we all love this activity of bodybuilding, and we just want to see it, in the best hands. And most of all, like a sustainable activity moving forward, which I don't think it is.
Well, yeah, we're gonna get into that. And, Bob and Shawn, I've always said about Bob, Bob, was good at his job as an MC, and he knows the sport, obviously. And I feel like he's rooting his whatever legacy he has by the way he's been conducting himself and how he's been speaking on behalf of the athletes and calling out athletes and making fun of athletes. I mean, that that's what he's going to be remembered for. And Sean Ray kind of being Bob Cicherillo's kind of yes man on his show is kind of like, that's the downfall of like, you're a legend, bro. And you're just sitting next to Bob every day on his show and just saying yes and agreeing to everything he says for the most part. And it's just like, man, like, I don't know. Sean used to be a lot like outspoken, and he was, you know, against the judges and how they were doing things and how they were conducting themselves. And now he's like, he's the mouthpiece for them, and he's everything they do is right and everything. Like it's not, we'll get into that, but and Sean was my favorite bodybuilder too when I was coming up in my career, and I looked up to him, and it was great to have him on my show and stuff like that, and it was a good start. But then he went rogue with Bob, and I was like, man, you've lost a little bit of my respect there. So
I think even in the early days, they were kind of, you know, would-be collaborators in becoming like the athletes' reps and stuff. You used to see them paired up, you know, at the Olympia press conferences, etc. But it's quite interesting because Bob is known as the voice of bodybuilding, and Shawn was unofficially known as the mouth. I think Peter McGuff gave him that nickname. Okay. And combined, you know, the voice of bodybuilding and the mouth, they're almost like this soft propaganda wing for the IFBB, where they're not officially the media representatives for the sport, but they definitely have this way of reframing criticism, developing narratives. And, you know, like I just said, Shawn used to be, I used to refer to him as like the Cassandra of the sport, because anything that he spoke out about, if you gave it enough time, was like a prediction that came true. Only the entire ecosystem and the industry and the fans hated him for it. But you can't hate for somebody, you know, that speaks the truth. But more and more, I notice a lot of the things that he says, he's kind of going back on a lot of the stuff that he used to say. For example, like he referred to the other day as, you know, the judges were these professional lineup of judges that should be trusted in the decisions that they make because they have the credibility and the credentials. But, you know, according to Shawn, that judging panel hasn't changed all these years later. And back then, he couldn't have enough criticism for the judging panel as being completely out of alignment with what the fans and the sport actually wants and needs.
Yeah, agreed. Like the same judges are still there. Obviously, you have Big Steve, who's been there for 50 years, roughly. And now you're all on board with it, Shawn, right? You can't. So it's funny. It's funny, but, you know, I think at the end of the day, you know, they work for the Mannions in a sense in the pro league, and they're part of it. And maybe they're not getting a paycheck, so to speak, from them.
Yeah, but they hide behind the phrase per diem. But
yeah,
yeah. And it's always funny how the outspoken rebels of any kind of industry eventually become the paid employees and the like watchdogs, because, you know, they have that initial trust. And then, you know, anyone with half a brain and some critical thinking can gradually see the shift over time. They become the rebels to the company man. So I think that's pretty clear these days.
Yeah. So we'll get more into that. I want to just show people the review you did of the Dream Big Mr. Olympia documentary that came out recently, and get a taste of your content. It's about a 4 or 5 minute clip, because I really want people to kind of see, and kind of we'll get some talking points after that as well. So bear with us. It's about 5 minutes, but it's worth it. And I want you to see the kind of the story he starts to tell when he's doing his review of this. So I'm going to share my screen here, guys, and we're going to get into this, and then we'll chime in after. Bring this up here. All right. We'll go full screen. All right. So let's go into this, and then we'll chime in after. It's about 4 or 5 minutes.
It's been 50 years since the 1975 Olympia, the happy accident that yanked bodybuilding out of the circus tent and into Johnny Carson's green room. Arnold smoking joints, Franco Columbo deadlifting a car, Lou Ferrigno's dad screaming disappointment into his deaf ears. The filmmaker stumbled into a subculture weird enough to be interesting and raw enough to be real. 2013's Generation Iron tried to bottle that lightning again and ended up electrocuting itself in the bathtub. The resultant uncanny valley was the sound of meta cringe. Athletes who had never been trained to act, acting like athletes who'd never been trained to act. That film was the sport's death rattle, the last time anyone pretended bodybuilding could be saved as culture. 2025's Dream Big doesn't even attempt resuscitation. Director Vlad Yudin stopped cosplaying Scorsese and became Goldman Sachs. His latest documentary offers something more sophisticated. Boredom as aesthetic choice. A corporate prospectus disguised as cinema. Sucking its own dick and calling it yoga. The focus now isn't what's the soul of the sport. It's how do we make this shit defensible to private equity. What we're watching is a pitch deck with B-roll, bodybuilding's estate sale, foreplay before the asset flip. Dream Big shows us the machine, the metrics, the process, the fucking chairs. And you're not even the target audience anymore. You're the ambient noise in the room where the deals get done. Jake Wood's 2020 buyout fits the private equity playbook. Acquire distressed asset. Strip mine the nostalgia. Juice the metrics. Repackage the decay as expansion. The Olympia as IP, waiting to be securitized. Watch where the camera lingers. Global competitor counts. Prize pool growth curves. International representation pie charts. Venue demand forecasts. COVID pivot strategies. The film never mentions the comment sections calling this shit unwatchable. Never mentions the annual streaming disaster where pay-per-view becomes pay-per-buffering. Never mentions athletes dying faster than coal miners, hearts popping like bubble wrap at 43. That would complicate annual growth rates. Volatility spooks investors. Death as bad optics. Dream Big checks every box with the joyless precision of a quarterly earnings report. Analysts don't see human beings destroying themselves for applause. They see data points validating expansion into territories where men still believe size equals respect. The athletes represent line items in a balance sheet. Chris Bumstead exists as proof the supplement to equity pipeline still prints money. Hardy Chupin's geopolitical drama is Middle East market penetration data. Nick Walker's knees and mental health breakdowns. Depreciation on a performing asset. Cost of doing business, baked to overhead. In private equity logic, the Olympia must appear brand safe and litigation proof. The golden era's hormone-fueled chaos replaced by algorithmic blandness, because boring's bankable when your real customers are credit committees and institutional allocators.
Yeah.
The camera finds Dan Solomon sweating over premium seating like he's defusing a nuclear weapon. Sold out in 3 days. The catastrophe of too much demand. His forehead gleams with the moisture of middle management discovering success is just failure that hasn't revealed itself yet. Institutional anxiety disguised as behind-the-scenes access. Bureaucrats performing process porn while the sport decomposes. A Big Mac that won't rot because even bacteria have standards. The chair crisis gets 10 minutes. Someone measures the distance between a judge's cornea and a competitor's glute striations. Someone else calculates side angles like they're planning Kennedy's motorcade route. This matters because of Chris Bumstead's lat spread gets viewed from 28 inches instead of 30.
Yeah. So I just wanted to give a good taste of his work, and it's good, man. Like I couldn't stop watching the thing because it's like, man, you're good at what you do. And I think people now, you're going to get some more subscribers and you're going to get more people wanting to see your stuff, because it's not easy to find people like you that have that kind of cinematography type, like that's really good editing and all that. So good job first and foremost. And, now that storyline, let's jump into it now. Let's get into it.
I was just going to say, like, first of all, thank you for saying that and for actually giving the channel some exposure, because it does seem that because what I say, and I don't sugarcoat anything, and I use offensive language a lot of the time, and I don't pull any of my punches when it comes to the metaphors. So of course I get algorithmically punished, and I'm very hard to find when it comes to just general search. And also a lot of people don't like the style as well, because rather than just writing an essay, I try to dress it up in a little bit of a narrative that takes a different perspective when I do these things. And a lot of the time when I make these different documentaries that you might see on the channel, I'm not kind of fishing for any kind of clickbait material that seems to be that's topical at whatever time. It's just something that I notice in the culture that I try to link to the history of the sport and then spin it with a different perspective. So a lot of people, it takes a bit of cognitive engagement to resonate with the stuff that I do, but a lot of the time I just do it for my own amusement. So it's not to deliberately be a shit stirrer or an iconoclast or create controversy that's going to generate me clicks, because as I said to you before, this shit loses me money because the algorithm just doesn't find it. And even that video, 2,000 views in a week later, for some channels that's great, but it'll never get past that. The algorithm already shows that it's dead, so no one else is going to find it.
And that's the thing too. Even with me, I'm very outspoken and swearing and this and that, and maybe that's what hinders me a little bit. But the channel's doing okay. I mean, but I think now that I'm maybe helping you get some more exposure, I think that will maybe change things a little bit. I think everyone's going to be looking at you now. Trust me, like everybody's going to be like the Mannion, Steve, Bob, they're all going to be like, hey, what the who's this guy? Right? So you're going to get a little bit of exposure there. So anything I can do to help, I'll do it for you, brother, because you put in the work, and that's not easy to do.
I'll have a hitman after me by the end of the week. That's what you're saying.
Well, Bob will say something as we get into this. But with the kind of the storyline you were telling there with Dream Big, and something I was saying on my show with Phil Clayhar, and Phil also mentioning this too, is that is the Mr. Olympia in financial trouble? Okay. Jake Wood bought the Olympia brand back in 2020 for an estimated total of $70 million. The Olympia brand plus the magazines, which is pathetically a dumb decision for him to buy magazines that are in print that was a dying thing back then, and for some reason he felt that he needed to buy that. They scammed him into that one. So $70 million in 2020, and from what I know, when Wayne D'Amelia left in 2004, it hasn't been really turning a profit since then, even when AMI was running it. And that was the reason why AMI had to sell it, because it's just bleeding money, right? And it wasn't bringing a return on investment. And there was other things as well. They were going bankrupt themselves, AMI, so they had to kind of sell off all their assets. But give me your little.
Sorry, Matt. What I want to insert here is a quick tangent, Tanner. What if I remember being at the 2013 Olympia, I think it was, when The Rock came on stage and he spoke about either putting a substantial amount of money into the Olympia, but he definitely there considered for a while taking over ownership. And that was very kind of quickly and silently buried as to the reasons why. But I have a suspicion that, his money people probably looked over the asset itself and probably said, don't go there because, this isn't aligned with your brand, The Rock being squeaky clean, and family friendly. And the Olympia and the bodybuilding brand definitely is that. So, but do you know of any reasons why The Rock didn't acquire it?
There's a few characters that looked at it. Arnold looked at it. Sylvester Stallone looked at it. Patrick Bates. Patrick David. Sorry, he looked, and none of them. All smart people, all people capable of paying for it, not a problem. But they said no, man. And it would have been, if anyone can get the Olympia brand, they would have loved to have that brand, but they said no to it. But Jake Wood said yes. And I'm going to tell you guys something. If Jake Wood didn't buy the Olympia, there may not be an Olympia right now. So one thing I will give him credit for being a charity case for the Olympia is saving the Olympia, because we wouldn't have it right now. Potentially wouldn't have it right now. And then you'd have the NPC funneling into, I don't know, there's no Super Bowl anymore. Just maybe the Arnold or something would become the new Olympia. I don't know how they do that. But yeah, so Jake Wood bought this failing money losing business in a sense. I mean, I wonder if he looked at the profit and loss statement and was like, yeah, okay, it's losing money. Maybe I can turn things around. I don't get it. What is he?
Well, he obviously did it for the women's bodybuilding side of things, the Wings of Strength. Women's bodybuilding was bleeding money. There was absolutely zero cultural interest. It had become a basket case of a sport, but yet he still put a ton of money into that. So sometimes I wonder, because I don't know Jake Wood. I don't know a lot about his history. I know that he's an aerospace entrepreneur or something, but obviously he didn't take the financials and the balance sheets too much into account when he bought it. It's a passion project, and I think that's what the documentary Dream Big tries to play up. Jake Wood stepped in at the 11th hour and saved bodybuilding, but unfortunately, he's no one that acquires the Olympia brand asset is ever going to be able to turn it around, because it's founded on the institutional rot of the IFBB organization, and that is the shit that really needs either cleaning out or, given its own kind of form of chemotherapy where you burn it out or you irradiate it. But any kind of wing that you acquire that's related to the IFBB is never going to be profitable. simply by virtue of what Mannion's done to it in the background.
Now, dive deeper into that. When people are watching, they're going to be like, okay, what is he talking about?
Again, this is where knowledge of the history is so vital when you're dealing with the present and the future of bodybuilding. And I think this is also where the sport, and people are going to argue in the comments, it's not a fucking sport, it's a pageant. Look, dickheads, if you were to officially look at the criteria of what constitutes a sport, and again, this is where the IFBB play their verbal gymnastics and also have a lot of wiggle room. Because if you call it a sport, then you're subject to certain legal and I guess like financial ramifications. So you need to allow unionization of athletes. You need to have some sort of governing body that oversees, the current opacity of the financial situation. I think the best place to really direct people, if you want to put in the comments, is that Washington Post article by Desmond Butler. Now, he was the son of George Butler, the guy that created or directed Pumping Iron.
Yeah.
And he really goes into the background and the history of how corrupt the IFBB, particularly under the stewardship and management of the Mannions, is and has been and probably always will be, because the Mannions are creating their own dynasty within the sport. How the fuck does Tyler Mannion become vice president and chief head honcho of Olympia commentary? Does he have, Shawn Ray and Bob like to talk about, where's your pedigree? Where's your credentials? Where's your history in the sport? Well, being related by birth and blood, I don't think gives you those credentials. And in any other industry, it'd be called into question as nepotism. And I think, you've done a really good job over the past, couple of years in calling this shit out. And of course, the diehard fans, because like I said, circling back, this sport is dependent on a fan base which doesn't care about the history, is largely apathetic, and almost bleeds a level of toxic positivity where if you ever speak out about anything, you're just being negative, bro. You're not dreaming big. Just stop speaking out about things that don't concern you or you have no knowledge of. This is the problem where we're at the moment.
Yeah, the fan base in bodybuilding is a very unique fan base. And I feel like a lot of them are supportive of the type of style and content that I put out. And you see them in the comments like, Matt, thank you for talking and speaking out. And they're like, thank you for doing this. And so there is that side of it, but there's also the old school, old guard guys that have been around forever. And they're like, stop being negative about this. I'm like, it's not negative. It's just this commentary. It's just my opinion or your opinion on what we're seeing and how these athletes are being treated. We just showed you the Washington Post article where it says exploited for decades, female bodybuilders speak out. Why is the Washington Post, out of all the things they could do, do a story on, it's the fucking Washington Post, okay? It's huge, right? Why are they wasting time and resources to talk about this? Because there's something there, guys. It's not fantasy like the Mannions think, it's lies. Bob Cicherillo comes out on the Olympia stage. That Washington Post article, that's lies. But it's not lies.
And they're not even opinions. They are grounded facts. Yes. And where there's smoke, there's fire. And the way that all this shit has been swept under the rug and not further called into question, or at least the Mannion's legitimacy further questioned. Because I know Arnold there, even whether it was Arnold or just the organization, wouldn't even allow the Mannions to come to the contest. I think it was Brian Powers who had that say. And, like any skilled controversy dodger, the Mannions just say nothing, just ignore it. And, in the ecosystem that we belong, today's scandal is tomorrow's newspaper and gets forgotten about and swept under the carpet. So that's the safest tack to take. And,
not anymore.
I think
not anymore. Because I'm here now and they don't like that. They don't like that. I'm calling out their shit, bringing up their old dirty secrets. And this Washington Post article, I'm going to move more into it, right? People need to know about the history. There's a lot of 18 to 25-year-olds that are coming into the sport. They have no clue what happened in the 2000s or in the 90s or anything like that. And when you realize that J.M. Mannion was running basically a soft porn sites using and
getting paid over 3 years, $900,000, and no one questioned those payments. And all the payments that flow into Mannion operate under this opacity, as the article describes, in the form of cash. Why the fuck is that not being investigated by the IRS at least?
Well, we hope someone from the IRS is watching. Maybe I'll forward this to them, and they should look into this further, because you're right. There is a lot of cash payments allegedly going on.
Wrapped in newspaper, as people mentioned in the article.
There you go, right? And so there's all this corruption, and then you have Tyler Mannion dating competitors, getting engaged to competitors, and then judging them at the same time. I mean, how corrupt can you get? And people are okay with this. They're like, yeah, okay. How can you take it serious that the judging standards are actually being abided to when you have a vice president that is like dating these women? They are like, I feel intimidated. Like the judge, like he obviously likes these girls, and so he's willing to date them and flaunt them around on his Instagram profile, and people are cool with that. You know, have an executive on the judging panel. Where's the separation of powers there? So this is how bodybuilding is run by the Mannion family, and it sucks because that's the only option there is really out there right now in bodybuilding, is to have this kind of corrupt family do this. And like father, like son, Jim Mannion was taking advantage of these women, right? I always say allegedly, but it is pretty much documented that he did. Women came out and had interviews on the Washington Post saying they did this to me, right? So it is there, guys. And now you have Tyler doing what his dad do. He's getting with these females, and I don't know if he's taking advantage, but he's using his power, in my opinion, to get them. And it's just like it's continuing on, and he's going to take over power. Right, Jim Mannion's, there's stuff going on with him. I think health issues or something. So it's going to be Tyler that's going to take over when Jim Mannion is gone. And I hear a lot of people don't respect Tyler Mannion. Steve doesn't respect Tyler Mannion. Bob despises him allegedly. So no one likes this kid, right? And he's in over his head, and you know he's arrogant, and he's flaunting around and dating these women that are in the league. It's like, this is the guys, is this what we want? Do we not want better? Like, what's your thought on all like the intertwining of this kid vice president dating these women? That
well, like I said, it's nepotism, pure and simple, and there's definite conflicts of interest. But
yes,
these guys who have this much concentrated power, and again, if you read the article, pay specific attention to how this was originally, the IFBB was originally a non-profit organization, and Jim Mannion in secret transferred it to a private company, and then he transferred the trademark of the IFBB to himself, sold it to himself for $10. And they operate with a level of impunity where they do all this shit in plain sight. So they sort of say, oh, you know, yeah, we tore up judges' scorecards, and we're on the phone during the contest and whatnot. And it's all operated in plain sight because they don't care. Jim Mannion, he used to refer to himself as like the godfather of the IFBB. And I think he made like a Photoshop poster or something of him one time as like in Goodfellas. Yeah. He refers to all of his little minions, Mannion's minions, as earners. And he gives them like the Tony Soprano kind of kiss on the cheek. I know that that's probably the Italian custom anyway, but it's kind of pathetic. And it's even more pathetic that he has this, he's kind of cultivated this fear of retribution, whether it's direct or just implied through the judging criteria. Because even like when you listen to Bob and Shawn talk recently about the Sarah PMMA situation, they're like, oh, you can show up next year, Sarah, and you'll see what happens to you because I think you've well and truly dug your grave. Well, are we judging the competitors on their words, or are we judging them on their physiques? Like there needs to be some level of transparency on how people are judged, and you know, just the criteria that are more established. It's quite
yeah. Bob obviously threw the judges and the Mannions under the bus when he opened his fat mouth and said, you know, you're pretty much done, Sarah. You know, there's no need to show up and you go to another federation. Like this is like, that's how unprofessional the mouthpiece for the Mannions in the pro league is. That's how they talk. They don't give a shit because they know there's nowhere else you can go. So we control you and we'll do whatever we want now in plain sight, like you're saying. And we're not judging you on your physique. We're judging on what you do and what you say. If you don't walk in line with what we want, you're out. Sarah's out. She's done. She's never going to win another Olympia, unfortunately. She is blacklisted.
And I think the IFBB even mentioned once that they were going to institute pre-contest health controls and measures for the athletes, but I don't see any evidence of that ever being done. And if PMMA, as dangerous as it's rumored to be, and this kind of big question mark and unknown quantity in its use in the sport, and I think it's bullshit. You know, Lee Priest said it really well last week, and I think you've kind of echoed a lot of the same sentiments, that PMAA isn't fucking muscle. It's basically a low-level form of injected plastic surgery for whatever it's worth.
Yeah.
And what is the end point of all this? If it's just judged on the visuals and the subjective optics, like Bob says, because I heard in his podcast, he was saying, well, it doesn't matter what you fucking use. It's open slather, and you can use what you want, and you can stand on the stage, and we're just judging you on what you look like. Yeah, but what if what you look like also comes with massive health ramifications, which is the whole point of the, the sport being taken into question in regards to its health and safety of its athletes. If you're saying that it's open slather and you can use whatever you want, what point are we going to get to where it was just our digital avatars are going to show up on stage eventually? And if we're judging just on the optics and the what people look like, we're going to judge fucking AI avatars? Is that where it's headed, or it just makes no sense?
Yeah, it's terrible PR for the sport, and they don't condemn it. They're like, yeah,
don't call it a sport, mate, because then that might have ramifications. It's a pageant, remember? Even though the IFBB clearly says on its website and masthead, it's the governing body for the sport.
And but yeah, the way they're conducting themselves, and it's hilarious. I think people are starting to see through Bob and Shawn's rhetoric, and I'm going to continue to call it out. And it's they don't care. Like you're saying, there's health, consequences with using these substances, and they're okay with it. There's like, as long as you can get away with it. If you don't like it, go to another federation. And you got to, guys, this isn't a federation. Like when they say another federation, this isn't a federation. Okay, it's a business now. It's a family business. They went from a nonprofit federation where you had board members and there's minute meetings and secretary treasurer. That's gone. Okay, it's just it's a fucking business now, guys. So Bob and Shawn, stop calling it the federation. It's not a federation anymore. It's a business.
Yeah, if it was a sport, it would be a federation as well. But that doesn't matter. But where do you think it all went wrong? Because the corruption in politics and this opacity when it comes to how the sport is run and how the judging gets conducted in a fair and balanced and equitable manner has always been pervasive throughout the sport ever since its inception, back through the Weeders, back through when it was, who's that other guy that was the enemy of the Weeders? Well, Dan Lurie and Bob Hoffman days, and probably even before then, and probably always will be. But when do you think bodybuilding, as governance really went wrong? Was it after Weider? Was it during Weider? What would Weider even think of bodybuilding these days if he was to come back from the grave and look at it? Would he be proud? Would he be disgusted?
I think because social media didn't exist really back when the Weeders were in charge, maybe it would be as bad because there's lots of corruption with the Weeders too. Okay, they're not squeaky clean themselves. And so it goes both ways. If there was stuff that controversial calls, right? Politics, certain people winning shows that really didn't make sense, right? It happened during the Weeders too, okay, with Arnold and things like that. So it goes both ways. But I think now that there's social media and there's more media involved in bodybuilding, we can call it out more. And so where did it go wrong?
On the other hand of that, Matt, the more information that's out there, the more murky the waters become. And when it comes to actually making, the distinction between the signal and noise, between what's, objectively correct and what's not. So that's another thing that works against the social media age.
Yes, that's true. And but I'm trying to think like when did things turn here and go for the worst? Because I think, the Mannions, Jim, he's been 50 years been doing this, right? And a lot of shady business. Steve Weinberger is another one of those guys that's very shady. allegedly cash deals going on for shows and things like that, and cash payments. And that's why I said, it's important. It should be important that, hopefully the IRS looks into the NPC worldwide and the NPC in the USA, because is everything going to add up if the IRS looks into their books and things don't make sense? Why were you paying Jim Mannion again $900,000, $600,000, whatever, when it was I think this was during when it was a nonprofit still. Was this when it was a nonprofit? He was getting paid as a photographer that much money, right? So there's lots of shady business. And at the end of the day, why are we saying this? Why are me and you calling this stuff out? Like, what's the end, solution to this? Well, I want it to be better.
Yeah, the sport has so much potential.
Yes, that's it.
There was always this push to push it into the mainstream, and I think as a mainstream event, it's never going to be accepted at the mainstream level. However, it was puncturing the mainstream, and look at the flow-on effect of what that had for health and fitness when Arnold was in his heyday. And unfortunately, I always am of the opinion that the 1980 and 81 Olympia took that mainstream goodwill and then put it back into the closet, but it's only retreated further and further backwards in terms of its mainstream or cultural acceptance. Even though there's a lot of people bodybuilding around the world, and especially now internationally, and gyms are everywhere, and there's all these different niche offshoots from bodybuilding. The sport itself is in a period of calcification, and I think, like as I referred to it's Weekend at Bernie's now. It's literally a smiling corpse, which Jake Wood and Dan Solomon are holding up and puppeting through the investor meetings and saying to the audience and the crowds, "Yep, this is alive and well, and look how much he's smiling. Look at how great he's doing." But I definitely don't think that's the case, and that's a shame, because like I said, you and we both have a passion for this, and we're not the only ones.
No, and that's why we speak out, and that's why I don't want people to think we're just complaining, we're just whining about the Mannions and all of this corruption. We're pointing it out so that maybe by us pointing it out, when then people they just can get away with it. They're not going to get away with it anymore. And the more we see this, the more we're going to call it out, and hopefully they can kind of change their ways. Will they do it? No. I mean, Jim Mannion.
More importantly, Matt, whenever I make a complaint about something, I always sort of think to myself, how can it be fixed? What's the positive steps in moving this forward into a different direction? Because right now it's dependent on business's always mindset and the level of entropy of the audience who has just given up, shrugged their shoulders, say, "Oh, it's just politics again," which we've been saying for the last 50 years, and let's continue as normal. But how do we fix it?
How do we fix it? And then case in point, the Olympia 2025, Derek Lunsford wins. 60% of the people out there are pissed off with that call, shouldn't have won, and it's just no one's satisfied with the outcome. And they're calling politics, and they're saying because of new tech and the head sponsor, and there's favoritism towards Derek and things like that. People see the corruption. Like it's weird. Like, they're fans of the sport, but then they see all the bullshit behind it, and but they're just kind of stuck because there's nowhere else to go. So you're stuck between a rock and a hard place, and there's no other option. Right. I mean, there is the IFBB Elite Pro, right, with Rafael Santoa, but they're, to me, not doing a good enough job on that end. They're not marketing it. It's just this kind of thing that's there and another alternative to go to, but they're nowhere near in comparison to the NPC and the power that's behind the NPC brand in the Pro League. So people just want to do the NPC because that's what there is. But I want to circle back to Jake Wood and the Olympia and the sales deck that you think this documentary was. And I didn't think of it that way until you mentioned that. I'm like, oh, wait a minute, that kind of does make sense. So are they getting the Olympia ready for investors? Now, take us through that a little bit more about what's your reasoning behind how you kind of came to thinking like that.
Yeah, like any hardcore fan of the sport, whenever we see a professional treatment of the sport done through a documentary, whether it's through Generation Iron or anybody else, we really look forward to that. So, of course, I watched this one with the expectation that sometimes with Generation Iron, it's a coin toss. It can mostly be bad, sometimes good. But at the end of that one, I thought, what the fuck did I just watch? because I don't know, maybe it's my teacher brain, but I start deconstructing what I'm watching. And I always ask myself, who's the audience for this? What's the conflict? What's the point the documentary makers are trying to make? And I could clearly see that this was not a documentary for fans, because it opens with a shot of Tariq El Gundy. I forget his name exactly or how to pronounce it, but
yeah,
you know, he's concerned with one of the light bulbs being out on the strobe lights, and he was talking about the very discerning nature of the fans. And if we make one little slip up, they are going to be on us in the social media for ages. And then it, you know, goes through this whole histrionic, that Mickey Rourke annoying mythological voiceover, which was completely ridiculous and out of place, referring to the athletes as warriors stepping on a stage to do battle every year. What the fuck is that?
yeah.
Stop treating the audience like idiots. But anyway, each scene just seemed to unfold this corporate theater, which was dealing with the illusion of issues that, you know, for example, Dan Solomon sweating over the seating capacity, you know, and the stupid zoom ins and close ups and the emotional drums hitting at the right points. You know, that's a bad thing, that the VIP packages sold out so quickly, or, you know, that the judges' chairs weren't at the proper angle and they were measuring the seating heights, and it's fucking ridiculous. But this is, again, what constitutes the smoke and mirrors of the sport. Because if the documentary highlights this, they're saying two things. Number one, the adults are in control and that we've got everything handled, don't worry. Not only does that say that to the fans, but more importantly, it says it to potential investors or buyers of the Olympia, because, like, as you mentioned, Jake Wood acquired the Olympia asset in 2020. Yeah. The documentary mentioned that he had a heart attack earlier on in that piece as well. And if I had bought the Olympia in February and then March had the lockdowns, I would have had a heart attack too.
Yeah.
But perhaps Jake, who initially acquired this as, you know, a passion project, now sees the institutional rot and how his hands are tied in having any kind of governance and control over the future of this. So, you know, 5 years is typically the holding period for any kind of asset. And I think that this documentary might be a signal to potential investors that the flip is in the works.
Okay. And so we did recently see a post of Jake Wood having a meeting with all the Goonies and the cronies, and Bob and was there, and Shawn was there, and it was funny to see. And then they're saying, "Oh, we're getting ready. We're planning for 2026 and 2027." Okay, so it's already 2026, so they're planning for at least this year. We already know obviously the Olympia hasn't sold yet, but 2027. So they're saying, well, we're going to still be around for 20. Well, obviously they have to say 2027, regardless if someone does come in and buy it. Doesn't matter. They have to project, you know, stability in the brand, so that, like, they're saying that. So to me, again, we're saying 2026 and we're planning for 2027. Don't worry, guys, nothing to see here. Everything's fine. I don't know how you buy a business that loses money every year, and like millions of dollars every year. Okay, you spent 70, so you're never going to make that 70 back, and continue to not, like, you're going to run out of money eventually, Jake Wood. Like, and you didn't increase the prize money. So are you the Super Bowl now? Does the Super Bowl, right, not have the biggest payouts and have the biggest fanfare? But the Arnold does now. The Arnold is outdoing the Olympia. And why is Jake Wood behind? Why didn't he just right away step up and say, okay, Arnold, not a big deal. We're doing good. The Olympia is making money. I have no problem increasing that. Why did they reduce the 212 prize money by 40K or whatever it was?
Yeah, there's a lot of reactive bureaucratic theater going on behind the scenes with Jake Wood and company, because, like you said, Arnold is, you know, it's almost like a game of follow the leader, because if you look at the Olympia or the IFBB, they're not being proactive in coming out with historical prize money. And if you look, you know, for example, last year they announced $600,000 for the winner, but it's so top heavy. But people see 600,000 and think, oh, this sport's doing really well. But the people at the lower rungs, you know, there is a massive drop off the cliff in terms of any potential earnings. And I wouldn't even think it would cover their expenses for a lot of these people to compete at the professional level, let alone all these other divisions and all the international imports that they parade around in the documentary as being global expansion and look at the reach of bodybuilding. I said that these people were paying to be extras in the theater of stepping on stage, because there's all those expensive fees and all the different things that the financial obligations that they have to meet. This bodybuilding is a really expensive activity, as we know. And I don't know, maybe that's how the IFBB are building some kind of financial cushion, just through seeing the athletes as line items in a balance sheet, as I mentioned, not as people. And, you know, it's a game of foreign extraction at the end of the day, because so many of these international athletes see Olympia stage stardom as their exit out of poverty. And like I said in the document, in my little video, $10,000 to them as prize money is worth dying for.
I know. And it just seems that Dan Solomon is totally taking advantage of Jake Wood. And I would say his incompetence and not really knowing what he's doing. I know he took over the Wings of Strength. You know, he was married to a woman named Crystal, and she had started the Wings of Strength, and then they got together and he started kind of funding it and running it and took it over and ran it into the ground and was losing money. And now he's kind of doing the same thing with the Olympia brand, takes it over, buys it. And it's kind of, and you got to think too, even the production quality of the Olympia, the live stream, the lighting, the way the athletes are treated backstage, it's a 12-hour show and their physiques are fading. You know, if you're smart, you want these guys to look their best, right? If you really care about the athletes and want to produce a show, and I got to give Wayne D'Amelio credit. He put on a fucking, for 25 years, he did the Mr. Olympia. And you look back in the 2000s and when the lighting, and I posted a video recently of like when Ronnie and Jay were battling with Kevin, and the lighting and the stage production, and it was like, man, that was Wayne D'Amelio's production. That was him doing that shit, and that's when it was good, right? Now it's like you look at Dan Solomon's an amateur level compared to what Wayne D'Amelio was able to do, and it's like it's fallen off a cliff. It's no longer exciting the way they did it. The athlete features. Remember, they used to interview the athletes, and you had Sean Ray sitting back in a suit. And they were like, so Sean, tell us about your preparation for the Olympia. They don't fucking do anything. They don't take advantage of all the athletes, the social media. They could be interviewing these athletes behind stage. There's nothing. It's like, think a bit about it. And all the money they're spending and paying Jake's or Dan's salary, they're paying the production crew all this money. And then this is what we get, a fucking shitty live stream, dark, terrible, gloomy lighting on stage. It's like,
I think it's almost deliberate, Matt, because then it hides what a shit show the competition is. Because there's a reason why the Arnold give it away for free. And again, you know, they set the tone when it comes to the prize money. They treat the athletes that much better. Yes. They limit the divisions. I think they put the guys on a relatively reasonable time compared to what the Olympia do. And remember, like Dan Solomon, or was it Tyler that year that he made the press conference that no, they weren't going to change the times because they wanted to hold everyone basically captive and in the audience to watch all those other shitty divisions first before the premier event of main bodybuilding. Nobody's interested. Nobody gives a shit. And the fact that they give such crappy prize money, and didn't they also reduce the prize money of the 212 this year from 90,000 down to 50,000? If this is a rich, flush with cash organization that is looking out for the best for its athletes and is moving the sport forward in any kind of positive direction, why are they skimming off the top of the other divisions to rob Peter to pay Paul when it comes to the open division? It's just clear in this direction.
Agreed. And I think they will fix the timing. The men's open bodybuilders come on stage this year. I've already heard that. They're going to do that. So they had this meeting the other day in Phoenix with, you know, Jake and all the people, whatever, and the judges and stuff like that. And they're going to probably get the men on stage by 12 noon instead because of the backlash that they keep getting. So they are going to try and make some changes finally because we keep speaking out. So I guarantee that's going to come and they're going to say, see guys, we're listening to you. We're going to change the thing. So, okay, whatever. Good. That's good. if you fight enough, eventually they'll cave and they'll do it. So it looks like that potentially news is coming out. With the prize money, I guarantee you they're probably going to increase the prize money this year for the first place. Maybe they'll increase it a little bit for the lower, like second, third, fourth, fifth as well. If they don't, people like me and you are going to be all over that in the media. Be like, well, you didn't match the Arnold. You didn't beat the Arnold, Jake. Why not? Right? You just made a documentary how good, how global the brand is and how your things are growing, yet you can't match the Arnold 750, right? So I think he's going to have to pull out of his pockets more cash and increase the prize money for the 2026 Olympia first place. So the investors don't get spooked, because if they don't see that increase, they'll be like, well, what's going on? Why can't you afford to pay that? So I think that's their strategy, is to kind of clean up what me and you are pointing out, just to save face, to make it look like everything's fine here. But we see the red flags. We see them going from Resorts World, where they made a big stink about, oh, look at where we are. We're at the Resorts World now. Look at the host hotel and the venue, and now we're at the Palms Casino. Now we'll take a step backwards. Not going forward.
Truly a global brand and an international competition. Remember back in Wayne D'Amelia's days, they used to move the Olympia every year to different venues around the world. Now, that to me is a little bit more global in its visibility than having it in Vegas. And I know that there's certain logistical advantages, and, you know, as the documentary shows, they even got the key to Vegas. Again, it's a nice little corporate tick on their pitch deck for the B-roll. But, you know, I think more than anything, like when the Wieders and D'Amelia controlled the sport, one of the big advantages that they had is they had centralization of the media. So they were able to create narratives that prop the athletes up almost in a mythological kind of literal God way. So we always look forward to checking out the magazines or the sort of snippets that we could get from any of the bodybuilding media that existed back then. And it was something special. But I think bodybuilding with social media has just become so saturated, and we have instant access to these guys every day in every form manageable, you know, and foreseeable, that it's eliminated the mystique, but also reduced the charm somewhat as well. So, you know, if these changes come where they put the athletes on at a decent time and, you know, provide some equitable distribution of the prize money, you know, I bet you at the end of the day, Steve Weinberger and Jim Mannion and Dan Solomon don't go home without a profitable paycheck. So why not the athletes?
Exactly. Yeah. You know, the Mannions make millions of dollars, guys. They have what, 40, 50,000 members paying $200 or whatever dollar every year. They have to renew their membership into the NPC, and then you have all the registration fees and everything. It's just their profit. It's this insane amount of money if you think about it, guys. So they're fine. They have lots of money. The NPC has lots of money. It's the Olympia brand itself with Jake Wood. That's what's struggling. If there is no Olympia, there is no Super Bowl. There is no filter to an end game, right? You know, the NFL has regular season games. Where are they going to finish off? They need to go somewhere. They have to go to the Super Bowl, right? So things are up in the air, but I think they're going to make some changes. They're going to try and improve things and listen. And that's why I speak out, so they can make changes. And hopefully they do it. This is your opportunity, Jim Mannion, Tyler, I know you're watching, Steve. Do better, right? Stop taking advantage of these athletes and being greedy.
We know they won't do better, because it's business as always. When you know, this you know, level of fan fatigue creeps in. But what can the fans do? Do we boycott the Olympia pay-per-view? Do we, you know, not pay for any Olympia or IFBB related merchandise? I don't know how we can support the athletes better, because at the end of the day, that's where the sport is going to improve. If the athletes get their due, which guys like Shawn and apparently Bob and a few others used to fight for all the time, but
they're no longer fighting for the athletes. They're no longer fighting. They are no longer fighting for the athletes. They
fight the athletes more than anything these days. They're the soft propaganda wing of the IFBB.
Yeah. the mouthpiece for the IFBB, and they mock the athletes, they ridicule the athletes. It's quite interesting to see the flip from Shawn Ray on that. He used to be the strongest advocate for athletes and fair judging, and he doesn't seem to give a shit about that anymore, and is just doing his dues and paying his, being part of the system now. Because if he doesn't, he doesn't have a platform anymore, and he won't be a part of the team anymore.
He's part of the infrastructure now, and they might not get a direct paycheck, but they definitely benefit from being part of the ecosystem, because what the Olympia or the IFBB grants them is access, and that's what you need. So
yes.
But what did you think about the part of the documentary, the accidental admission of Generation Iron, with Chris Bumstead exiting the loading dock at the end of the movie, and he's like, "This is the benefit of being the champion; you get to escape out the back door." And I thought it was a great metaphor for how even Chris Bumstead avoids his own coronation at the end by escaping out the back door.
Yeah, it was like what a shitty farewell.
It's very poetic, isn't it? Him just basically disappearing into the Las Vegas evening.
You pointed that out in the video, so guys, make sure you watch the rest of that video, because that you'll see that part in there.
With Bumstead leaving, do you think that this hollows out the sport even further? Because Chris, for a while there, was the one thing that was keeping bodybuilding at least to a level connected to the mainstream. And with him gone now, we talked the other day, we had a look at the Google spikes, the trend line spikes of Chris Bumstead searches over time, and they've definitely bottomed out. And as Chris mentioned the other day, Lee Priest brought to light with Xavier on their podcast that Bumstead's losing thousands of followers, and that's giving him, existential panic for some reason. So Chris is even realizing that his legitimacy or relevance is linked to bodybuilding, but bodybuilding also had that reciprocal relevance and legitimacy linked to Bumstead. So there was this kind of a codependent, system.
Yes. Is Chris as relevant now that he's not competing versus when he was competing? And of course he's relevant. He's a powerhouse in marketing and pushing
to the hardcore audience.
Yes. Yeah. But to the new fans that are coming and finding out about the sport or bodybuilding, maybe not so much anymore, because he's not competing anymore. And
you think he makes a comeback?
No, health-wise, no, I don't think so. I don't think he comes back.
Do you think he makes an investment either as a co-owner or substantial financial part owner in the Olympia brand, seeing as though his company Raw, which I think he's one of the heads of, partnered up with that private equity firm last year, which didn't get a lot of PR or fanfare in the bodybuilding community, but he definitely has the financial means to do something with bodybuilding if he decided to step in. That would be a more interesting angle.
Yeah, and Chris Bumstead, just like The Rock and Arnold and Sylvester Stallone, all can look at the Olympia brand and be like, well, they all have money to buy it. So does Chris and his investors. But
the best thing about Chris is he doesn't have mainstream kind of celebrity that he has to worry about. He's never had any acting aspirations or any overtures in connecting and making it big in advertising in the mainstream. So, it is potential or possibility for him to step in and turn it around if he really wanted to make a difference in the world of bodybuilding.
Yeah, definitely he could. Right. Now, does that mean he'd want to buy the Mr. Olympia brand? I'm not sure. I don't know if that would be a wise investment. Like I said, it is losing money, and he'd have to invest a lot into it.
It would definitely be a case of vertical integration in regards to the Raw supplement brand and sponsors, because now they're connected with the European, I forget the name of that supplement brand, but they're huge too. So they definitely have some serious money behind them to do so.
Yes, but then now you have a company, a supplement company that has, part ownership of, or owns the Mr. Olympia. Is there conflicts of interest there with certain title sponsors of different supplement companies?
No, much more so than it is now, the conflicts of interest that exist in the corruption that's embedded.
Then does it just continue again? Does it continue again? I would rather Chris Bumstead own the Mr. Olympia because he would know how to run it and be for the athletes versus just a private investor group coming in and like AMI did and try and run. Like they don't know what they're doing. They had Wayne D'Amelia, no, actually Wayne was in 2004 and they bought it. So they didn't even have Wayne. They had Dan Solomon running things. So it's just like it doesn't. You need the right person to buy the Mr. Olympia that knows the sport, that's a fan of the sport, that understands. And I know Jake Wood is a fan of the sport, but the way he's running it and letting these people run over him and take advantage of him and talk shit behind his back. Bob talks shit behind
his hands tied. Do you think a lot of at the end of the day, he's the figurehead, he's the money man, but he's not the actual, he doesn't have any legitimate governance in any sense of the word?
No, he doesn't. His hands are tied in that sense, and he doesn't know what he's doing, right? And you can see it. If I ran the Mr. Olympia brand, I would be more front facing. I'd be in front of the cameras more. I'd be more involved. Like I give a shit, right? I wouldn't be so mysterious and quiet. Like Jake Wood doesn't say 4 or 5 words half the time when he's in front of the camera. And so you need the right person in front of facing the business to be the face of the business. And Jake is that person, unfortunately. Bodybuilding is about
bodybuilding needs our version of Dana White for the like.
Yes, think about that. Look at how much Dana's
he doesn't give a shit. He says what he wants. He makes these very kind of media savvy and friendly sound bites that get you quoted.
Yes,
we need that. And Dan Solomon, he just seems like the ultimate corporate yes man who doesn't actually have any organizational ability, let alone actual organizational credibility to his name, which he's just released also a success self-help book as well, if you're interested, Dan Solomon. So maybe you can jump on that after the podcast and learn the ins and outs and the secrets on how to run a multi-billion-dollar enterprise into the ground. Well done.
Yeah. That was Dan Solomon's focus over the Olympia weekend, was talking about his book. And make sure you go buy his book. Make sure you go buy my book. You're so desperately trying to sell his book. I mean, this is where we're at, guys, with the people that are running.
Well, remember his movie on Joe Weider, that Bigger? What a fucking disaster, or piece of shit that was.
Yeah, again, guys, we're not here like we can bash these guys and throw them under the ground here, but it's just like it gets tiring. And at the end of the day, I want to see the sport do better. And we can complain all day about these guys, and nothing is going to change. But if we can make some small impact by calling this shit out and start to see them improve the show times, improve the way they treat the athletes, give the athletes more respect. Don't have Bob coming out and making fun of Nick Walker and calling him the H frame and say he's going to be 8th place at the Olympia and mocking him and, things like that. Will that change? No, Bob will never change. Bob will go to his grave being an asshole like he is. That's Bob. He's a loser. He's an asshole. He's always going to be that dickhead, Smo looking type guy he'll go to the grave like that. So he's not going to change. And will Tyler and the Mannions try and step up and do better? Probably not. They'll just, as long as they keep making money, they'll do well. But maybe one day, maybe that'll all catch up to them. And question, do you think there is room for a new league to develop that takes over for the NPC? Is it viable to start a new bodybuilding organization to compete with the NPC and then make a new premier event for bodybuilders to compete in that pays good prize money? Do you think that's possible nowadays?
The only hope, I guess, for that, and if historically you look back on all the attempts at creating these
Vince McMahon,
Vince McMahon's, and I think Wayne D'Amelia's SDI, a bunch of the other ones, like even the IFBB Elite, I think it is the Rafael Santoya banner. That's pretty much a non-event failure.
Yeah,
but if there was one to come about, it would have to be backed by Saudi money. It'd have to be almost like a Beta Budai passion project where he knows he's going to lose for quite a few years on the front end until he builds it up. But I think, and this is where it's going to be a case of follow the money. And I know that when Vince McMahon, put his WBF forward, he offered serious money, and it was a lot of temptation to these broke athletes back then, and they stood firm with the IFBB, like Dorian likes to talk about, knowing that the Olympia was the premier event back then. But, I think athletes these days are a little bit more financially savvy in chasing the money, and I don't think there's any strong loyalty now to the IFBB as a brand. So if the Saudi money or somebody else Russian money perhaps comes forward with a new tangible, legitimate, long-lasting, looks good on paper, has some very serious I think like we need the credibility of established names as well to run it.
Okay.
So whether that's a Chris Bumstead or whoever, if it was just some no name, probably not.
Yeah. You know, I think there's
a very short shelf life, so they're not going to risk defecting to another organization unless it's rock solid and ironclad at the end of the day. So the IFBB is their only one and only. It's like a life preserver in an ocean amongst a sinking ship.
Yeah,
they will tread water just to, clutch to a piece of broken furniture so that they can float in the corrupt seas of the IFBB rather than going somewhere else and making money elsewhere.
Yeah. I agree. I mean, everyone's like, if people come to me and say, there should be a new league that starts and try and go that route, and I'm like, if there's money and you have a good, business plan for a new league, there's potential, but it's a big undertaking. A lot of money is needed, and like you said, it's got to be stable for superstars in their sport to come over and do a show in a different league. And the WBF or whatever, Vince McMahon's league that he started back, and he paid like $200,000-$300,000 contracts, and the guys came over, but they couldn't maintain it. And that's Vince, and he had millions of dollars.
About the WBF, as it probably would have had potential, given that they had the the wrestling's money in the background.
Yeah.
But just the narrative that he set for the sport, people don't want that for bodybuilding. They tried to create them as like WWE avatars, but it just doesn't work for that kind of pitch to the bodybuilding audience.
Yeah,
and then the drug testing made them all look terrible, so that was another thing.
Yeah. Before we wrap it up, like, what do you think the next 5 years looks like for bodybuilding with the Olympia and the NPC and, the structure? Jim Mannion is I think he's near 80, right? JM Mannion, I think he's got health issues, so I don't know if he's going to be around much longer. You got Tyler Mannion, this young kid that got thrust into this position, seems to be flaunting it, playboy, meeting these girls and this and that and whatever. What do you think happens in the next 5 years here?
I think 5 years, is a very short time frame to project in bodybuilding. And if the status quo, the historical status quo, is anything to go by, it's just going to be a lot more of the same unless some major event shakes up things. And, whether it's a competitor or they seriously bleeding money in some way. But I think the Mannions are comfortable enough to always keep it propped up and giving that appearance, whether it's to private equity, that it's a stable asset. So I don't know if things are going to change in that regard. And, we talk about how it's exciting now because the bodybuilding Olympia title changes every year. I don't know if that's a great thing, because at least under the Weeders, when there were dynasties, there was the ability to set firm criteria as to the direction of where the sports had headed. And there were definite era narratives that were established through Dorian, through Phil Heath, through Jay Cutler. We look back on those times with some kind of now nostalgia, however much we complained about them at the time, that we hated Phil Heath or we were sick of Ronnie Coleman or whatever. But there was this narrative flow that took the bodybuilding into some kind of direction. But with the sport chopping and changing so much in terms of who the winner is every year, it's again a very interesting narrative smokescreen that the IFBB are using, because they're trying to create drama and tension, but they're also doing the sport a disservice by not having any form of like legitimacy when it comes to criteria, which we could say, all right, this is established this era, or also champion narrative. We're going to forget who the fuck the champions are in the next 5 years. That's a definite. We're going to look back on 2020 and go, who the fuck won the Olympia then?
Who was it again?
I can't remember. People like John Hansen or myself or Randy Roach or any other bodybuilder that's really loves their history can look back on any year of the Olympia tell you the fucking placings, you know, from 1st through to 10th almost, because that's how much the narrative was embedded in our collective conscience back then, as opposed to now, where it's like everything else in the media landscape. It's, you know, somebody, you know, if you want to kind of draw a comparison, gets assassinated or near assassinated, and that narrative is forgotten tomorrow. The same will go for bodybuilding.
Yeah, yeah. I love the dynasty. I love when Ronnie was just continue to hold the title. We don't have that anymore. And is that due to because we just don't have a dominant Mr. Olympia anymore? There's no one guy that's just so fucking dominant like Ronnie was, like Yates, you know, Jay. You couldn't take him out, right? We don't have that anymore. So sure, you know,
that again was the illusion of being dominant. The IFBB established that illusion, that smoke screen of dominance, because if you look at Dorian, he was maybe dominant legitimately for 1 or 2 years.
Okay. Yeah.
The other, you know, 4 or 5 Olympias that he won on top of that, he was definitely not dominant. Same could be said for Ronnie. Same could be said for Jay Cutler. We all have those favorite Olympias where we go, the champion definitely lost that year.
Yeah. Yeah.
However,
you're right.
Media was never going to let his narrative fail in regards to his dominant champion.
Okay, so that being said, is that an improvement then? The judges aren't, the politics aren't there anymore, just keeping a champion in place to keep the narrative going.
Well, I argue that the politics are in place, and like I said, it's created more of a smokescreen of the tension and the drama behind the narrative, because it changes every year, and the people at home think, oh, I better tune into the pay-per-view to see, we'll kind of see which champion is going to be crowned this year, because we never know who it can go to, because the judging is much more fairer. Well, we know the judging's not fairer. It's all predetermined fucking corporate bureaucratic theater that's decided on Instagram 9 months prior. Like I said in my little video there, they're just rubber stamping it at the end of the day. But they're not establishing any kind of, you know, visible narrative or also criteria which they're held to.
Yes. Yeah, the criteria isn't definitely being held to. I mean, with Derek, you know, the caliber of quality of muscle that we see now versus back in the day in the 90s and 2000s, it's just not the same. And I think that's why people are so upset now when he wins, because he's just not at the level of a Yates or a Dorian or Phil. Jay, the density of the muscularity is not there on Derek. And we're like, is this where we're at now? Like, you had Hottie, you had, you know, Andrew was very muscular and it was great condition. And then that's not the criteria anymore. It's kind of soft and blurry muscle, blurry biceps, no definition in the front of your physique. How can you be the Mr. Olympia? And was it because Derek was the Triple Crown winner and they needed to set that narrative to get that going so the Pittsburgh Pro can get propped up and be a part of the mix now? They need to give it a reason, right? You have to give it, you know, some validity to the Pittsburgh Pro. So the man was like, well, Derek, come do the Pittsburgh Pro. You'll win, even though Nick Walker, a lot of people had Nick Walker beating him in the Pittsburgh Pro, but they gave it to Derek. Now, then they had to come and do the Olympia, wins the Olympia, even though he was like panicking backstage and wasn't on 100%. They gave it to him anyways. You know, that's where politics comes into play. And it's just, people see through that. You can't hide anything now on social media. We can see it, guys. Steve, we can see this shit now. We can call you out
Derek
a lot more now.
Your ultimate brand safe, media friendly, compliant, almost like a puppet for the sport. You couldn't want for a more legitimately safe, brand compliant puppet or avatar as Derek is. When he talks on podcasts, it's like his eyes are shooting off to the upper right, looking at the cue cards that one of his IFBB media representatives are holding up. You know, he's probably a nice guy, and it's good to see his meteoric rise throughout the years and how he's overcome a lot of, you know, he started out as a lightweight and the middleweight, the 212 and the champion. Like, you definitely can't look down on his achievements. And, you know, I also sort of think, you know, that's amazing what the guy did last year. He won the Triple Crown, and then, you know, he's got a baby in the background, and he's a nice kind of family guy. Like, you know, that's great, but
doesn't mean you should win. I get your. Doesn't mean you should win just because he's a family man and he's a good guy and this that. You got to fucking win because you deserve to win. And I think that's what people are getting pissed off about. It's like we don't think.
But were the other guys any better? Really, like you had Samson, who again, when he won, I sort of thought I was going to do a video on it at the time, but I'm not very good at these, you know, very quick hot takes because my shit takes a while to do. Yes, I'm just very slow and deliberate. But when Samson won, I thought it was very strange how not one commentator, bar one or two, I think it was Paul Gillette was one of them, who was watching that weekend on day one, who, when seeing the lineup, said, "I have Samson as the definite winner." When he got out, at the press conference and posed, and everyone was laughing at him in the background, if you notice, and kind of smirking, going, "This guy's got no fucking chance."
Yeah.
No one had him as the front runner. When he won, all of a sudden the narrative became, "Oh yeah, definitely fucking Samson was the winner. He was conditioning was on point. Well, good enough for Samson on the day." What the fuck is good enough conditioning? I thought the Mr. Olympia has to be the best and above and beyond what the criteria of the sport is. Are we judging for good enough, or are we judging for, oh, you deserve it this time because so-and-so doesn't look as good as they did last time? I fucking hate that that statement whenever it's made. You didn't look as good as Pittsburgh, so therefore we're not going to give it to you now. Hang on, are we judging what's up there on the fucking day, or are we judging what they, their resume from what they were 6 months ago? Make it clear.
Yeah, we don't know what the criteria is anymore because of the flip-flopping between these champions now. And it's just confusing. And to me, to be honest, when I get ready to watch Olympia and cover it, I know it's not going to be that good of a show. Like I know the live stream's not going to be good quality. I know the lighting is not going to be good. We've been waiting all year for this fucking show. And then it's this terrible production and the lighting, you can barely see the condition. Like, what is this? It's just 2025 and then 2020. The technology, the camera, like, why can't they fucking make it? It was better in 2000 when Wayne was doing the product. The quality was better. You could see the skin texture. You could see it better. You can't see it now on the live stream or the pay-per-view. I remember when the pay-per-view was on, like, it was cable, right? It was a cable, and they had it on the pay-per-view back then. And I remember when bodybuilding was on ESPN and Fox Sports and things like. Right.
Yes. Wide world of sports. Yeah.
Yes. And it's just not there anymore. You think it'd be more involved in the media now, but
again, Matt, this goes back to the governance, because if they keep it hidden in the shadows and quiet and secret, then you don't get mainstream interference or the IRS poking their feelers into what's going on financially behind the scenes, where if you keep it all on the down low and the low key, no one's going to ask the difficult questions, are they? And they're going to just depend on their short memory, blue collar mentality audience of complain, but let's do nothing at the end of the day. And that's where it comes back to guys like you and myself. We wouldn't waste our time and our energy coming on here to talk about a non-event with any kind or level of passion if we didn't give a fuck about where the sport is headed. We could just do a drama channel like Greg Doucette, and people will say, "Oh, this is drama in its own way." Yes and no. Drama has to have an audience, and people are more interested in what the fucking trend twins ate for fucking breakfast yesterday than they are in the future of the Olympia. So make of that what you will.
Yeah. We're fans of the sport, and we want to see it better because this is what we love. This is our football, our hockey. This is like what we do. And when it's run like this, and we get piss poor production of shows and terrible lighting, and there's no standardized lighting for the pro shows. One promoter can do this, the other can do that, and fuck off and not do a live stream for their show. There's no rules and guidelines set in place. There's no structure, and there's missed opportunities. And I want it to do better, right? I want the NPC to do better because that's all we have right now. So.
Yeah, or at least not to devolve any further than what it is, because, with all the different commentator opinions and viewpoints that we have in the sport, from Lee Haney to Paul Gillette to Sean Ray, etc., Lee Priest, yourself, we all agree that it was once better than what it fucking is now.
Yes.
And if it continues on this same path and trajectory, what the hell is bodybuilding going to be in 5 years' time?
I don't know. That's the scary thing. And if they keep the people around that are around, like Dan Solomon, who to me in the past 5 years has not proven himself to show that he has the brain power to put on a good show at the Olympia. Jake Wood.
Well, the pigs can only feed at the trough until too long before that trough is empty.
And it's empty.
When the trough is empty, what happens then? The whole entire rotten edifice just collapses around them.
Yeah, and then you get a fake, made up kind of documentary trying to push Dan, stressing out about selling out of VIP tickets. And that was specifically put into the documentary to make sure people saw that and that he's the big man behind all that. it was funny to watch. Like it's that the show sucks every year. People say the Olympia sucks. The Arnold, good. That's how you produce a show. It's entertaining. It's quick. It's fast paced for the most part, you know, right, for what it is. But the Olympia, the Super Bowl is worse than that.
And that's why weird. The documentary also sucks so much, because it didn't address any of those legitimate fan complaints, the real issues behind the production values of the Olympia. Why the fuck, you know, it's a 12-hour marathon just to get through to the main event. Why athletes are dying left, right, and center, male and female, at an average age of 43. Why there's no safety or health testing. These are the questions which a hard-hitting investigative documentary would do if it had any fidelity to the sport. And that's another thing, Matt. Like, are we just living in such a saturated media ecosystem that bodybuilding documentaries, an honest bodybuilding documentary, not only won't have any fan interest because we've seen it all before, it's no longer interesting as a spectacle, but nobody's willing to do a fair and honest documentary anymore.
There are. It's just the future. There are some documentary channels. The historian, I forget what that YouTube channel is, but he does like a documentary style, like on Lee Haney and Kai Green, and he does all these kind of historic.
That fucking what's his name?
He does Dorian Yates. He does like a documentary style
thumbnails. Oh, the Iron Historian.
Yes, there you go. That seems to be getting played, but I don't know. Like yeah, fucking no, but I'm saying I was trying to tell you, like, but people are watching that style of kind of documentary historic review of bodybuilding, and it gets 50,000, 100,000 views. And
that's such an sad. I used to think it's a sad indictment on the mentality of the fans. Not to put anyone down, but you know, I tried to produce my own videos that aren't watched. Whatever, like Iron Historian came out and said that my shit was boring. That was his words. Okay.
I didn't know. I'm not advocating. I'm just saying that's what's out there.
Yeah, no, and whatever, you know, he can have his opinion of whatever, because why would you watch someone who has just clipped together a bunch of interviews and then threaded it together with Wikipedia copied fucking it's not even his real voice, dude. He uses an AI voice to narrate that. And this is what I'm worried about, the future of bodybuilding entertainment as far as YouTube goes, is this is complete interference of AI. No, AI is a tool. It all gets used in some capacity, whether it's big name movie production or small level YouTube capacity. But when it becomes the entire infrastructure of what you're doing narratively, you can fuck off with that shit, because that's crap.
Yeah, we don't want AI to take over my job or your job or any other, you know, person's job and reporting on bodybuilding. I don't think that's necessarily going to happen, but when people are putting together videos or documentaries and they're using AI, that could be the downfall with that respect. But I do think AI should be a hybrid put into the judging. I don't know what you think about that, but I think that can definitely be supported. I know the Olympics is using it to judge the figure skating, how many spins they're doing accurately, because you could be a judge watching figure skating and see them do a rotation and be like, oh, there's only 3, there's actually 5 in there, and it was a way better value. But because you're a fucking human and you can't catch every instant, you might miss things. That's where AI can come in and help hybrid.
There's an artistic component to bodybuilding which depends on the value judgment of the human naked eye, that I just don't think the 2-dimensional representation that AI judges off can substantiate its end decision, so to speak. So, for example, you know, we feed pictures or videos to AI and ask them who looked better on compared to what, but because the AI is not actually there in the venue as a front and center row judge would be, because you know how like people would always say, oh, Dorian looked completely different in Rio as he did to in magazines and video. That's where the AI probably falls down at this level. It will get
exactly. Yes. And that's what I'm saying. You can now upload video into AI and it watches the video and will determine what his transitions look like, the cadence. They can even tell, you know, one poser versus another. And like, you know, when there's a shitty poser versus a good poser, like Samson or whatever, compared to like whoever that's not good at posing. And it can tell it, like, it's accurate. Like you can see if it actually knows what it's doing. It's getting it right. So it's crazy at this level of its infancy with AI that it's already able to determine, you know, the winner and be at, you know, at least on par with what the judges are doing for the most part. It's pretty crazy. So I'm saying with that power already,
and it would have to be an AI developed specifically just for bodybuilding, because we know with AI, it draws on a lot of the user's bias and also the history of the conversations that you've had with AI to lean in subtly sometimes to the favor of whoever's using it. So this would have to be a very open and transparent criteria of what the AI is focusing on. You would also have, you know, judges, human judges also collaborating with the AI. And they'd probably do a, you know, similar to what they do now, where they eliminate the high and the lows and concentrate on just the general, you know, median of the score.
And me being an advocate for it and doing the AI reviews of shows, I'm the only one that real time tested it with live stream shows before there's any chatter online about the results. So the point they're saying where it's taking from chatter and using, you know, that data to try and determine the winner based on popularity or whatever. That's not the case when it comes to the shows that I covered with Urs Kalsinski going into the Open and competing against Quinton. And after prejudging, before there's any chatter, I do a comparison with the photos, and ChatGPT had Urs winning, and that's who ended up winning in the finals. I'm like, wow.
Speaking of damage and narrative control, I just want to get your opinion because I'm not sure. But do you think that Chris Bumstead deserved that win over Martin Fitzwater that time they competed?
No,
I thought that was very. You don't?
No, I don't. No. I think Chris should have won that show.
Absolutely. That's what I thought as well. Yeah, but they would never have let him win it. That's what I've always said as well, because that would call into question the entire legitimacy and credibility of the Open division, and just sort of say, well, because like I said in my documentary, when you have to have a classic division that says, remember what we look like when we used to look human, you're basically fucking quietly admitting that your premier event has eaten itself and is no longer viable.
Yes, true. And well, they didn't let Chris win, which was a massive mistake, you know, marketing wise. They let Urs win. Urs came from classic to Open, and he won 2 Open Pro shows. But they didn't let the most marketable athlete in bodybuilding history win a fucking pro show. They let Martin Fitzwater, who is, you know, convicted drug charge, like all this, you know, they let that guy win. Okay, so I mean, it is what it is. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for that. Right? Appreciate you.
Yeah, well done.
So fucking Steve Weinberger, like, he's been doing this for 50 fucking years. Like, get someone else in there. Get someone else in there being the head judge at the Olympia in these shows, because Steve was just so corrupted, right? You know, and Jim Rockell, you know, the stories he has about this guy. And I'm not saying Jim Rockell is a saint or whatever. These judges, there's corruption through all levels, right? But Jim was right beside Steve. He worked with this fucking guy. He helped, you know, through his career, bring Steve up. And for him to be like, they rip up the scorecards. They don't fucking care. It's Steve's way or the highway. He intimidates the other judges sitting next to him. You have to do what Steve. That's how it is. It's Steve's way. I don't care if there's 5 other people on this panel with me. Steve is going to dictate what happens in that show, and that's what's continuing to happen now. And same with Tyler. It's Tyler's way. Who cares? You got the vice president sitting next to you on a judging table. You're going to go against his narrative, what he wants? No, you're going to listen to what he has to say and just go along with it. So it's it is what it is. You wonder why we get the results that we get sometimes, people, because of the people that are in power right now. And as long as they're still there, it's going to be that way. But man, I appreciate that. This is a great interview, man. Lots to say here. I'm sure we'll get some feedback from it, from the powers that be. But I appreciate it, and we have to have you on again. You know, maybe have you on a live show. I know the time difference with Australia might be difficult to get you on the Monday.
I'm fine. I'm up at 2:00 every day anyway, because I start work early generally. And that's the issue with my thing, because I work so much and such long hours. I only really get to do this one day a week, Saturday or a little bit of Sunday. So, you know, I wish sometimes I could put more into it and do it full time. But for now, it's just a passionate hobby. And even if I lose money, I think I'll just continue to keep on doing what I do. And
I think
like I said as well, congratulations to yourself for running such a different kind of channel, because you don't just bow into the gossip. You make it, you know, from the perspective of someone who's competed in the sport but has history in the sport, and is asking the right questions at the end of the day. And, you know, the criticism that you get from Bob and some of the other commentators, the questions deserve to be asked, and they deserve some consideration at the top levels, because we're fans and we're paying, you know, their paychecks at the end of the day. They fucking work for us.
Yes, Bob, you work for us.
We're not beholden to them. And I'm sick of this gatekeeping where they think, you know, oh, well, you know, you haven't competed on an Olympia stage, so what right do you have to have any opinions? Because yours is always going to be the wrong opinion. Well, guess what, mate? Like, times are different. The institutions have changed. The gatekeepers are no longer operating the same as what they once used to, and that's what they fear.
Yeah, you don't need a certain pedigree to have eyes, right, to see what's in front of you, and the whole experience thing. I mean, I have experience, like you have experience, I have experience. They can try and downplay it. I mean, Bob was a failed pro. Didn't really accomplish anything. He got that one pro world, whatever it was called, show that was handed to him. You know, so that's what he wants to live on, and have that trophy behind him and make himself feel better. Than, you know, more power to him. But that's what he lives for. A failed pro bodybuilder, didn't accomplish much. Took him 13 years to turn pro, and nothing to clap back home for, to be proud of. But that's Bob for you. You know, he'll do what he can. He's always going to be around. They're not going to get rid of him. You know, I tried to have my crusade against Bob and to get him fired and whatever. And I wasn't the first one. Aaron Sergerman tried to get him fired, and Fuad tried to get him fired. We all wanted
documentary. That was quite strange to see him pop up. I thought, oh, okay, that's an interesting choice to have. You know, adding into that type of corporate friendly documentary, a current or just a recent ex-felon.
Yeah, you know, you got the Dave Palumbo, ex-felon, John Romano. I mean, it runs deep in bodybuilding with the ex-felons.
They're thick as thieves, as they say at the end of the day. There's a lot of complicity going on, and they need those passes.
Yes, we could go on. There's so much. I want to even talk about like Dave Palumbo and what he's doing. So, but yeah, we'll have you back on, and we'll get into it again. But I do appreciate you, brother. And all right, guys, so make sure to check out his channel. I'll put it in the description. He does great work, and definitely be hearing more from Shawn. And I'll definitely have you back on. We'll do more together, brother.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity, and thanks again, Matt.
All right, we'll catch you in the next one. Peace, guys.
Hey guys, Matt Cicherillo here, host of the Muscle Discord podcast, and I want to do a quick plug of my coaching business. I do online coaching as well through my exclusive fitness app, where you have guided workouts to follow, meal plans to follow, all the macros are laid out for you, the cooking instructions. You do weekly check-ins with me, upload your photos, your measurements, and I make adjustments as needed every week for you. So use promo code MuscleDiscord when you sign up, and you'll save 20% off your monthly coaching fee. All right, guys, I'll catch you later. Peace.